My guest today is Dr. Diane Kaufman. Dr. Kaufman is a child psychiatrist, poet, artist, and the founder and director of the Hold On campaign for suicide prevention, an organization which helps people improve their mental health and well-being by showing them how to communicate expressively by making art, writing songs, making movies, and other creative things that Dr. Kaufman's going to tell us about. She recently presented Love, Grief, and Suicide, an expressive arts approach at the Mental Health Academy's North American Suicide Prevention Summit. As a songwriter, she's won awards for Best Original Song and Best Lyric. As an author, her book, Bird That Wants to Fly, inspired a children's opera narrated by actor Danny Glover. Dr. Kaufman understands mental health from both a personal and a professional perspective. She has bipolar 2, survived attempting suicide, and has lost someone to suicide. Welcome to my show, Dr. Kaufman.
Thank you. I'm very glad to be here.
So to start, your bio is quite honest and forthcoming. I would imagine the intention of admitting that did I get this correct? You tried to commit suicide and survived?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Your intention is, hey, I know what I'm talking about. So tell me your story, including that, and then from there, how you founded the Hold On campaign for suicide prevention.
Sure. So I'll start with the quote story.
Okay. Yeah.
Of how the suicide attempt.
Yep.
So, of course, things lead up. Right. So I'm going to start at a certain point, but there's the backstory as well. But when I was in medical school, I was at Downstate Medical Center in Brooklyn. And I was not yet diagnosed as having bipolar 2 disorder, which ultimately I was diagnosed with. And bipolar 2, Roman numeral 2, stands for having episodes of depression, as well as at least one episode, if not more, but at least one of hypomania. So most people, or a lot of people, know what mania is. So let me just say something about mania. So mania is when a person, because of an illness, a psychiatric illness, all of a sudden feels as if they have tremendous energy. So they have a lot of energy. They are not sleeping because they feel they don't need sleep. So they may be up for days at a time, have so many thoughts in their head. So there's like a rapid fire of thoughts in their head. Sometimes, and their speech is increased. So the rate of speech becomes rapid. Sometimes because of so many ideas in your head, your thought might be jumping from topic to topic. A person.
One of the things that just crossed my mind is, if you're doing this for 4 days, don't people see you on the street or see you at work, see you in the office and wonder about you?
So, again, I want to say that I have not experienced mania. I've experienced hypomania, but I'm going to answer what you just said, which is what's so sort of, and what's the right word? Sort of amazing and sort of awful is that anyone, I think, if in seeing a person who's manic, they're going to know there's something terribly wrong with that person. They may not know that this is a psychiatric illness, but they're going to see someone that is so revved up, extremely talkative, may have grandiose ideas. Like I'll put this in quotation.
They think they're crazy. Well, they basically
I was going to say, quote, crazy ideas,
Yeah.
even though they're not crazy. But I have the cure for cancer. I can quit my job. It's just
that's a good one. That's a good way to diagnose it. What I've observed, literally, when you wonder, is that person a genius? Do they really have a cure for? And then they say something else. And go, no, that's what Dr. Kaufman's speaking of.
Yeah. So very, very big ideas. The person also in a state of mania, their mood could be euphoric. So high. Their mood could also become irritable. they can become extremely impulsive. And this is totally out of character. So the person may be, just a regular, relatively modest in their spending habits because they want to save money and live within their means. But when they become manic, all of a sudden they're spending money like there's no tomorrow, and they are at risk. And I have met adults who this happened to. They are at risk of bankrupting themselves because they are so impulsive without any break on their behavior.
So you were going through this.
Yeah. So so let me say a few other things about hypomania. So sometimes in hypomania, not hypomania, the mania that we're talking about. In mania, there could be rapid shifts in the mood, right? So in bipolar Roman numeral 1 disorder, which is manic depressive, the person could be going from the high to the low very quickly, or they could have a mixed state where they're sort of laughing and crying and their mood is shifting back and forth. The person, going back to what you asked before, Daniel, is that the person themselves does not recognize that there is something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody else knows there's something terribly wrong. Also, with a person who's having a bipolar Roman numeral 1 disorder, there could even be psychotic symptoms, meaning the person is hallucinating as well. And I can remember a patient of mine, a lovely woman who happened to have bipolar disorder. She described for me an experience where in that manic state, she was taking a shower and she experienced like the water being like the rays of Jesus coming to her. But it wasn't like, oh, this is spiritual and it's beautiful. There's water, no, it was more like she was almost delusional or she was delusional in what she was experiencing. And hypomania, it's not the same as that manic state. In hypomania, the person's mood and behavior and sleep, and another part I want to talk about is their sexual drive, right?
Well, so you were a doctor before this happened, or?
Yeah, so I was in medical school.
So you
So
must have recognized it because this is your expertise as well.
well, I think so the answer is no.
Oh,
So
because like you were
so
saying, you thought you were normal. You thought you were
yeah,
acting normal.
yes. So with the idea of hypomania, it's an upswing in your mood. So you're sleeping maybe a little bit less, but nothing dangerous. You're more talkative. You're more creative. You have more ideas. Maybe you're spending a little more money. You're funnier,
What were
right?
you doing?
I experienced, and this is jumping ahead from the suicide attempt that I had, but I can remember a time when I was a pretty.
You were still manic. Sorry to interrupt, but you were still manic after your suicide attempt.
So maybe I'm going to go back and kind of complete the story about the suicide attempt. Yeah. Yes. So there I am in medical school. Yeah, so there I am in medical school, and I decided that I wanted to kill myself, and of course, I happened.
You were not feeling good, or this?
I was experiencing depression.
Hmm,
I was in an unhealthy relationship.
that'll do it to you.
I was doing some things out of character in terms of my behavior. I felt ashamed of myself. I was also angry at myself.
And you're in
And,
school.
and yeah, when I was in my medical school,
So you've graduated like undergraduate.
yeah, so I was still in the medical school. And what's interesting, Daniel, looking back, is that I have a diary that I kept of poetry that I wrote when I was in medical school. And it's all in my own handwriting and it's dated, the day and the year.
Nice.
And I have poems before I attempted suicide. I have a poem that I wrote It starts off on my birthday. So it was my birthday, March the 23rd. It was it's on my birthday. They gave a talk about depression, and I wondered what it would be like to be or be not. And then I'm describing feeling depressed, and in the bottom right corner it says suicidal ideations from life's frustration. Then there's another poem, maybe a month later, and I'm describing feeling like, quote, flotsam, floating away from shipwreck.
Hmm.
Okay. Then there's another poem where I'm more in an upbeat kind of mood, and I don't know whether I just was being fanciful in what I wrote or whether I was getting to be what I would learn was hypomanic, because that poem is about, I'm describing the MAD, the mad leaves falling from the sky. And I'm in the poem, I'm asking the leaves to teach me how to fly.
Nice. I like them both.
Right.
On one
Yeah.
hand, you could teach that sounds like a Tom Petty learning to fly. And then the flotsam floating away from the shipwreck sounds like you could help co-write with the rock band Tool, or maybe, Metallica or something dark.
Uh-huh.
Those guys pull it off because they're so angst. But it's good imagery, good
Yeah.
words and
So
imagery.
so the poems were describing my mood. However, I was not sharing with anyone what I was feeling, right? This was all secret. And then there's a poem that I wrote that I believe was shortly before I attempted suicide. And the poem is really, when I look back on it, it's really terrible what I'm writing about.
Oh, do you have it? Do you want to share it?
I'd have to, I may be able to share it by pulling something else up, but basically, it's about, yeah, I'm describing that and it's declarative statements. I, I am nothing. I am worthless. No one has ever loved me. No one will ever love me. And then the end of the poem talks about, if I tell someone like how I'm feeling, if I tell someone that, then like I'll have to kill myself, because that will be the only way I can hide once more.
I like that line, but what I noticed different is,
Yeah.
whereas your other ones were more, whether they're dark or light, they're more creative. This one was just black and white. Like there's nothing.
Oh yes,
It's
you're right. It was black and white. And it was all statements of hating myself, hating being
yeah.
alive. I can't tell anybody. And shortly after that, I attempted suicide. And none of what that poem said, because I was, this wasn't a creative exercise. I was writing what I was thinking. Right. And none of that was true. And it's also, it includes like, it includes also I'm ugly. I think it starts off I'm ugly.
You nailed it when you said none of that is true. You nailed why the creative stuff, whether it's good, high or low, it was kind of made me think, oh, that's kind of a cool thing, even though you're in this manic state, which is not okay. Versus these statements where there's no creativity, that's the point. They're not true. That's how you could tell that's not true. Like, if I was to read that back to myself, I wrote it, that's how I would know. Let me see what's true or not in these. Well, yeah, flying with the trees, that's kind of not really true, but it's kind of creative, which is true. I have creative.
Mhm.
The other stuff, flat out, not true because it's not creative. I'm not expressing that maybe the best way, but
Yeah.
I'm analyzing if I was chat GBT or analyzing data
Yeah.
sets, I'm like, that's not true. And why is it not true? Because it's how it's written. And anyway,
But as I wrote it, I didn't have the mental health to be able to say, wait a minute, what did I just write? None of that is true. And also, I just wrote that. I think I ought to speak to somebody that I'm not feeling okay. For me, I believed what I was writing.
Oh.
I believed what I was writing. And out of that, I ended up alone in my dorm room. So purposefully, I had a roommate. So alone in my dorm room, and I don't know the exact date that I did it, but I would imagine I did it on a weekend, or maybe it was the start of a holiday that I didn't want her to be there, to
Mm-hmm.
find me. Although eventually somebody would have found me. I didn't think that far ahead. But I was purposefully alone. She was not going to be there. And I took an overdose of prescribed medication. And the medication was the kind of medication that you take enough of it, it could kill you because it can affect your heart. And my fantasy was that I was going to fall asleep. It was like going to be like an easy death. I'd take the pills, somehow I would fall asleep, and then I just wouldn't wake up. And that would be that.
Mm-hmm.
Not thinking about my family, my friends, my roommate. I wasn't thinking about anyone. I was only thinking about being in such emotional pain, and such a strong feeling that I did not want to be alive. And that was the only thing that I was thinking about.
Well,
Um,
there are people when I talk about suicide, they get immediately not a lot of people, but quite a few
yeah,
immediately defensive. Like, how could you? What's the matter with you? I'm like, how could you be angry at me? That's why I feel hopeless. So what you're speaking of is you didn't really think about them. I to me, you have more compassion and foresight into that than some of the people you actually worried about harming. They, anywho, I didn't really get some of the people's perspectives on.
yeah,
There are some people that do not understand. You cannot just pull your bootstraps up and snap out of it.
yeah. It can be, or those feelings and thoughts are so consuming that it's like you have blinders on, right? And part of that is also related to, um, now that we have knowledge of this, that in terms of one's brain functioning during that time, that like our prefrontal lobe in terms of problem solving, that it's like offline. You don't even have access to that part of your thinking when you're in that state of mind. Um, so as I said, my thought was, I don't want to live. I had a means. I want to say this. I am grateful that I don't own a gun, because if I had had a weapon, I would not be here talking to you today. I would have shot myself.
Somebody found you, or did you come to, or did someone
Yeah.
find you?
So what happened was, instead of dying, the medicine made me. I didn't fall asleep, and I started to feel very sick.
Oh, you
I
vomited?
started to feel, yeah, I was vomiting. I
Oh,
started to feel
perfect.
extremely nauseous,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm vomiting, and I'm really sick. And I realized, hey, I'm not going to die, right? That I'm alive now, and
Yeah.
I'm not going to die, and I'm super sick, and I cannot be alone, right? Um, and I contacted my sister. I have a sister who's 7 years older than me, and she relatively nearby, but I didn't, back then I didn't drive, and I took a taxi to get to her home. And I don't know if I told her immediately what I had done. I might have. But when I was over her home, her apartment, I started to vomit blood.
Oh.
And at that point, she took me to Mount Sinai Hospital in New York City. And of course, I'm saying of course, but not always does a person tell the truth for various reasons. But I told them the truth. This is the medicine I took, and I wanted to kill myself. And quickly, I'm sure they gave me an NG tube. Right, I was on IV fluids. I don't remember if they gave me Ipecac or not, which would have also been for. Oh, they gave me charcoal.
Were they
Charcoal.
nice to you? Because one thing I'd be afraid
Yeah.
of is if I tell them the truth, they're going to put me in a straitjacket and haul
Uh,
me away to the mental hospital. And that's not the kind of care I was looking
yeah.
for.
I I I I don't have any visual memory of being in the ER, although I know like factually what they did. I don't have any memory of anybody being mean to me. I think I would have remembered it if somebody was mean. I was admitted to a medical unit to be monitored, to be stabilized. I was there a couple of days. I remember though, I think there were at least two other young people in the in I don't know what you call it, the suite or the room that I was
Mm-hmm.
in, and I do remember there was a young girl. I don't know, maybe she was in her 20s. She had a physical illness. I remember her crying throughout the night. Um, I do remember there was a psychiatrist who came to speak with me. That was after I had been on the unit, the floor, a day or two. And he asked me if I wanted to be transferred to the psychiatric unit because I was then on the medical unit.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, I no longer was having any suicidal thoughts. In fact, I was sort of on the other side of the spectrum. It was like, I want to forget this happened. I want to leave the hospital as soon as possible. And I want to go back to being a medical student. Right.
Yeah.
And so I was not having suicide.
Reminds me of something that I learned from someone else who's an expert on this topic.
Mm-hmm.
They told me, Daniel, most people that try to commit suicide or think about it, they don't want to die.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They just want the pain to stop.
Yeah. And that's part of the issue of thinking, is there another way for the pain to stop? And in the suicidal mind, it's like there are ways, but in the suicidal mind, it's like the only way is for me to kill myself. So there the doctor is asking, do I want to be on the psych unit? And I ended up telling him no. Because I was no longer actively suicidal, they couldn't commit me against my will. It would have needed to be voluntary.
Mm-hmm.
I also was thinking, how on earth can I become a psychiatrist?
I was about to ask you, then you finished med school. You went on and finished. Cool.
Yeah. If somebody knew I attempted suicide and I was on a psych unit, my thought was, I can't become a psychiatrist if I had a mental health crisis and ended
that'd be
up
like saying
I
can't be a doctor if I broke my leg once or ever got sick. Then how am I? Yeah, that's just not.
Yeah. So there was that level of shame and stigma, and but I want to say that I believe if I had said to that psychiatrist I wanted to be transferred to the psych unit, I really believe that would have happened. And the reason is because as a psychiatrist now, although I'm now a retired psychiatrist, but as a psychiatrist, I think I would have phrased the question differently, meaning to a patient, because why ask somebody, do you want to be in the psych unit if you're not going to admit them? Meaning if I answered to him, yes, I want to be in the psych unit, if he's not going to voluntarily admit me, what is he or she going to say to me? Well, I'm sorry, you want to be in the psych unit, but we can't admit you to the psych
you would be voluntarily.
Yeah, it would have had to be a voluntary admission because he couldn't commit me against my will because
Yeah.
I was no longer suicidal. So my thought is that if I had said yes, I really would feel more comfortable if I could spend a few more days in the psych unit. Then I think I would have been admitted to the psych unit. As it was, I ended up discharged, and I started in treatment seeing a psychiatrist for mental health treatment. My job, as it were, was to be a medical student. I didn't have another job with being a medical student, and I was dependent on my parents financially,
Mm.
and was I guess on their health insurance. And I can remember my I think I met my dad for dinner the city, New York City, Manhattan. And my psychiatrist, I think his office was in the West Village. And my dad, we had dinner together or lunch together, and my dad was driving me to the appointment. And I very much can recall my dad humiliating me or trying to humiliate me because he was giving me the check to give to the psychiatrist. You know, he was paying for this.
Mm-hmm.
And I can remember my father holding up the check way above his head for me to have to grab the check out of his hand, right? And because why didn't my father just hand me the check? Like, here, sweetie, here's the check
Yeah.
for the doctor.
Why was that?
Yeah. Because my father was angry that I had tried to hurt myself.
Back to that part where why is everybody angry at you? It's it's like you just had some other, like you broke your leg, and someone go, well, who are you thinking of? Were you not thinking of us when you crossed the street without looking? How dare you break your leg? Like, it's not my fault.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
What?
I don't
And
wrap my head around that. Can't wrap my head around it.
well, wait for this story. This is real. Many years later, so we're talking about maybe 20 years later, so it's approximate. This happened when I was about 40 years old, and now I happen to be 71. So this is when I was about 40. My father told me he wanted to apologize to me. So this came out of the blue, and my dad was not someone who was apologizing ever. So he said he wanted to apologize to me, and I said, "Oh, okay. Like, what for?" And my dad told me that after I had attempted suicide, that he had told me, none of which I had any memory of, that he had told me, Diane, the next time you want to kill yourself, tell me because I'll tell you the right way to do it.
Wow.
And he had been carrying that around with him for around 20 years and then felt that he ought to apologize. And meanwhile, that maybe thank goodness for defense mechanisms, I had totally blocked out what he had said to me because I had no memory then. And even after he told me, I had no memory that he had ever said that to me. But obviously he had said that to me
You had survival.
and knew how.
I would call them survival skills. Ironically, again, no one really wants to end the life. They want the pain to end. You would just follow the same set of survival skills.
Mm-hmm,
I can't listen to that right now. I've got to get my act together because I don't want to kill myself, but I don't also know how to stop the pain. So I'm going to block that comment out dead because I got other things to process.
Exactly. No, I think it was actually a very good thing that I blocked it out.
Also, another thing not as important on my list for they're not really helping us, but to understand maybe what your dad's why they say that. Let me ask you, do you think maybe it's just because they're afraid they don't know how to cope with this. They have no skills on what to respond. So I
Hmm.
just say, you know what, that's not true. How dare you?
I know. Yeah.
Because they're afraid. They're afraid they don't have the skills, right, to respond.
And
Is
I think that um, my father had a hard time in that emotional connection.
especially men. Yeah.
And he once told me, so, oh, my dad, it was so interesting. He didn't understand psychiatry, like he didn't even think that being a psychiatrist was a doctor. Right. And he also once told me that, like, if he started to maybe either talk about himself or unwind himself, as it were, in terms of his own history, that would be really bad for him to do. So he didn't want to do that. Now, his own brother had a mental breakdown. So my dad had an older brother and a younger sister. And my uncle, whose name was my Uncle Freddie was became a lawyer, and he was a very flamboyant man. I mean, maybe I'll tell you what I mean by flamboyant in comparison, sort of.
To how'd you get to starting the Hold On suicide
Oh yeah, yeah.
prevention?
Let me just sort of finish the thing about my Uncle Freddie. Then I'll go to the Hold On
Okay.
campaign. So he was a very dapper dresser. He had like a handkerchief in his pocket all the time. Artwork on the walls. He was married about 5 times, and he ended up. Um, Depressed, hallucinating, violent, nervous breakdown in Bellevue Hospital, had ECT treatment, electroconvulsive shock, and then amazingly, eventually came back to fully functioning. And my thought is that he probably was having some kind of a bipolar episode.
Hmm.
But going to the Hold On campaign, so and also linking back to that hypomania and symptoms
And
that I
also
had.
graduating school because then you did go back and you
Yeah,
finished.
so I'm there. Yeah, I'm in medical school. I graduated. I ended up doing 6.5 years of post medical school. I was initially trained as a pediatrician, and then I immediately continued in psychiatry and then child psychiatry. But the Hold On campaign is really an outgrowth of my life experiences. I was writing poetry, and
Very
I
good at
and
it too, based on just what I heard in your
oh,
introduction.
thank you, thank
The Hold On song that's on the website
you.
that the songwriter's performing, you wrote that poem, and his name's
Yeah,
Shan.
Shan Carvalho.
Yeah, do an
Yeah,
acoustic guitar version of your song. Well, he helped you finish a song that he took from your poem,
yeah,
Heartbreak.
exactly. Yeah.
I'd love to see the lyrics. They weren't on the YouTube channel.
If you go to the website on the create resilience menu item, the first one I think the first one says gifts of hope, and then it's the healing songs and opera. There's a lyric video of it. So the about page has him performing it. The create resilience drop down has a lyric video which has all the lyrics.
Okay.
So the Hold On campaign was really an outgrowth of that particular song, which I'll explain, linked with all these other personal and professional experiences that I've had around mental health illness as well as suicidality.
So you
Um,
get this idea,
I
this inspiration that it helped you to write poetry. It can help others, and not just poetry, songwriting, making movies, painting a picture of your face, writing a poem. These expressive ways to express how you're feeling and in the moment, what you're thinking, what you're needing, what you're wanting. You
Yeah,
somehow realize that this could be a way of other people who are about to want to end the pain. Just, hey, this is how I'm feeling, because they don't have the tools to express that.
yes. Mm-hmm.
It's a great organization. I don't know why there's not more of them that you're
Mm-hmm.
doing. So tell me how you made it an organization. Was it small to start with, just you and a few other people? You had an outreach on people help me organize this.
Yeah, yeah. So, getting back to that Hold On song, which I originally wrote a poem called Heartbreak Times Infinity. And I think that was December 2022 when I read of the death of Stephen Boss, AKA Twitch, whom I had not followed, but I read of his death. He was a dancer, a celebrity. He worked with Ellen DeGeneres. He was on Dancing with the Stars, with his wife, Allison Holker. He was larger than life person. And when I read of his death by suicide, it seemed as if this was a total shock to people that he took his life.
Just shocked me a little because I don't know who the individual is, but he sounds what we would call successful and
Yes.
living a happy dream life.
Yes. And the poem Heartbreak Times Infinity was around layers of heartbreak. So the first heartbreak is that your very own mind is trying to kill you by what it's telling you. Right. Then
You
you
know what?
act on
That's
thoughts.
actually a good way to say it because there's the mind and the heart. Listen to the heart.
Yeah.
Use the mind for reading a book or some
Yeah.
science experiment, but follow the heart. The way you said it's perfect. What did you just say? The mind,
Yeah. The mind is trying to kill you. It's interesting because in the lyric, it also references what you just said, because in the lyric, which is a component of the poem that I wrote, because in the poem, there's a refrain that goes, but hold on, your thoughts are all mixed up. And then it talks about feelings coming and going, and the pain is going to pass. So hold on.
That's like my computer's my mind. Hold on, my computer's on the fritz. That doesn't mean we need to totally end our life.
Yeah, yes.
It's just a computer. We'll fix it. Hold on a moment.
Yes. And in the poem, there's also a part that goes, only silence now. And that line had to do with like you're silent with that one thought, I want to kill myself. Right. But when Shan and I were working on the song, and he is the singer songwriter, and with all the other songs, I'm the lyricist. I haven't written the song. That he repeated the line, only silence now, only silence now, only silence now.
Meditation comes to mind. For me, it was like, maybe it's a moment to take a break, take 5 seconds. And
but I said to him, Daniel, I said, let's add another line. So it's only silence now, but how can love be known?
Nice.
Right? And that references the heart. Like if you start thinking, but what would the loving thing be? Maybe you're not going to kill yourself that moment, right? So then you're going to hold on. So it became the song Hold On. And it started to win awards for lyric and original song, right? Eventually it won a whole bunch of awards. But what happened was it won an award in Paris. I think it might have been a gold award, right? So not the best, but a significant award. And I'm feeling super excited about, oh my God, in Paris, France, my song is one of the gold awards.
Yeah, I would be.
But then I was feeling at the same split screen moment awful, because the purpose of the song, especially the music video, which is free of charge, includes the 988 number. So the purpose of the song and the video is to be listened to because the lyric
988 for listeners who don't know, that's the suicide hotline, right?
Yes, yeah. 988, you're right. Yes.
988 means I need help now.
Yeah. And it could be for suicide or also for another kind of emotional crisis. So on the one hand, the song was winning an award, but the real purpose of the song, to be shared, to be put on websites, to be played at mental health conferences, that was not happening. All right. That was not happening.
They put the 988 in there, you said, right?
Yeah, so I have the 988 number on the music video, and the music video can be shared on mental health websites or on a domestic violence program or wherever, because my thought is that one, not everybody knows the 988 number, and two, the music lyric is therapeutic.
Mm-hmm.
And also, in listening to the song or watching the video, you may be more likely to call 988, having just listened to the song.
Perfect.
Yeah. So here I am thinking, wonderful, it won an award. Horrible that I can't get anybody to use it for its purpose.
Well, so I'm
So,
confused.
yeah.
Clarity again. They can use it for its purpose.
Oh, yeah. So I'm saying, yes, yeah. So it's all available to be used. But then you have to reach out to the organizations and have the organizations say, yes, we want to upload the video, which is for free, right? We want to do this, right? And so I decided, so I went to sleep that night just feeling so despondent. And the very next morning, I woke up and I thought, well, F it. I'm starting the Hold On campaign for suicide prevention, right?
Oh,
That
I see where it got its name from now, too.
yes, that's where it came from, with the idea. Initially, I was saying the Hold On campaign uses the power of art to connect, express, and heal. But now I've also added something else, which actually has been part of what I've been doing, but I hadn't added it to that phrase. So, uses the power of art to educate, connect, express, and heal.
The
Uh,
people that need to recognize signs of suicide or help
yes.
people.
So the songs, and now there are about five internationally award-winning songs that I have, and some of these songs, I think there was the song "For You, My Lovely," which is a postvention song, so it's around suicide loss.
Something you mentioned came into mind was you back to when you're telling me about your manic story. I'm feeling high. I'm feeling like the leaves can fly. I'm feeling like the fledge come from a ship. I need some help. Help, help, help me.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah,
We should
this,
collaborate, right? Yeah, so the music and the lyric and artwork, right? As well as I'm wearing something. I'm going to take it off. I have I have a bracelet that I had made, and
hold on.
it says hold on, don't give up, which is what we need to do, but those are also the names of two of the songs, right? So hold on, don't give up, and then it says call 988, save your life. And inside the bracelet, it's you can't really see it, but it's in here. It says every day is suicide prevention day. So this is a bracelet that I had made, and it's part of our gifts of hope that I want to. And I fortunately I have had some donations. Of course, I need more, but the
It'll be
whole
in the show notes. And I was going to mention when
oh
we end the
great
episode that
yeah.
you can go to the website and not only listen to the song and get some
Mhm.
tools like how do I write a song or where are your workshops, like which I want to talk about next, the workshops you provide on how to write poetry and songs, that people can also go there to donate. I noticed the
Yeah.
donation when I went to your
Oh,
website, the donate now.
so for example, these bracelets, the idea for gifts of bracelet is this should be in psychiatric emergency rooms and given to
It's just
people.
like the thing they give you when you check into the hospital.
That's true.
Saves
Yeah.
your life. Call 988.
Yes. And it could be in emergency rooms, inpatient psych units, dual diagnosis programs, residential treatment. Um, the cost of this is minimal. It's really inexpensive to make it, and nothing like this is being made available. I'd like it to be through donations. What I would do is donate it free of charge to different programs, right?
From your donation, sure. So let's talk about the preventive measures, the ways. So tell people why, because I believe it, but I don't think people have thought of why. Expressive communication like this helps prevent suicide because it gives people, it teaches people ways of saying how they feel
Yeah.
and what they
Mhm.
need. Like I'm feeling like in your poem that wasn't true. I'm feeling like um I'm feeling worthless. Can you help me? Tell people how to write a poem real quick is what I'm getting at. And then your workshops, they're great. They're on your website and we'll have links to that. But tell listeners listening right now, quick tips. You want to write a poem because to me it's like complex. Like, oh, I'm not Robert Frost. I can't do that. Nothing's coming into my head right now. How do you start writing a poem?
Um, I start by, for me, it's really expressing the thought, the feeling, and I also, I, and maybe everybody is different, but language can be musical, right? There's a musicality of like having repetition of sounds or repetitions of a beat that's going on with what you're writing. I'm not a poetry teacher, but I would say that I would encourage people that to start writing down their thoughts and feelings, right? And also, John Fox, who's a poetic medicine practitioner, he's the former head of the National Association of Poetry Therapy. John's a friend of mine. He's in California, and he's written some tremendous books about poetry for healing. And you can just go on Amazon. One of his books is called Poetic Medicine. And in fact, I wrote a poem from his poetic medicine book. There was a writing prompt about writing like a magic spell, like a potion. Right, and my poem, which I also called Poetic Medicine, which is actually the title of his book, but it talks about like a metaphor of almost like a cauldron, right? Almost stirring a cauldron of troubles. And it starts off like there's always a big black pot, and it's being filled up with troubles, right? And you can't release your grip from stirring it, right? And what's interesting about writing a poem is that you don't know where the poem is going to take you. So, you're not the same person, right? From when you started writing it to when you finished writing it. And in writing or in painting or in sculpting, that these are safe ways to express yourself. Right? That the page is very accepting. You can do anything you want on the page. You could save it, right? You could rip it up, right? You
Mm-hmm.
can not show anybody. You can decide to share it with someone. So sometimes we need a release, right? We need to get that
Well, what I'm
feeling
getting
out.
at is
Yeah.
I think people make it more complex. There are those
Oh,
great poets like you and your friend who wrote the book, and then there's the rest of us. And I think what would be helpful if people just don't think about it so much. You don't overthink it. Just say where you are, how you're feeling, what you're afraid of, what you don't want to happen next, what you'd like to happen next,
mm-hmm,
and like I hope there's a tomorrow or whatever's happening. I mean, because otherwise, what happens to me is I get to, oh, how am I feeling? I'm feeling sad. Boring and not true. I'm feeling like I'm about to want to throw the glass or the dish at the wall or scream and holler,
mm-hmm,
but I'm afraid the neighbors will hear me.
mm-hmm.
And that's what you need to put in your poem.
Yeah.
I
Mm-hmm.
want to scream. I'm afraid the dog will bark.
Yeah.
And then the neighbor will see me. And then Diane will teach you these tricks like a better poet or songwriter. You repeat a really cool line.
Yeah.
Like,
And then I'm thinking that, yeah, now I'm thinking too, almost potentially it could end, I'll have to swallow my scream.
now you see, she's really good, people. You partner with her, you write a hit song, a hit poem. But for starters, you need to get the basics on paper. You'll feel better. it'll be a release, and it's the starting point. Even the best songwriters, the Beatles, John and Paul, they would put stuff on paper. Diane can probably tell you for Shan finished your song. He did it quickly, but there's always a rewrite. This sentence could sound better than that. Or Diane will come up with, what was the line you just said?
What, swallow the scream?
Swallow the scream. There's people like that in the background. If you get to the point when you want to make your poem into a song, which is cool, it's awesome when then another thought came to my mind, Diane. If I was in Portland, I would volunteer for this. Is then you group up with people. Like some people are good poem writers, and other people like you did with Shan, Carballo. Is that how you say his name? Carballo.
Yeah.
He's the guitar player, but also he knows how to phrase stuff and do beats and rhythms. And so there's always a team, back to the Beatles or any band. So, I mean, if you want to go that route.
Yeah. And I used Upwork. So I'm not myself a songwriter or a singer. Although I think.
Quick, do not write poem. Do not prevent yourself from writing a poem because you try to sit down with pen and paper and go, I can't think of the line as good as swallow scream. I'm no good at poetry. I can't do this. That's not true.
Yeah.
Just write what you hear, write what you see, write how you feel. And if you want something, what I want, but I'm not getting it, or am I getting it? Just keep it, just spit it out.
Yes. Yeah. I collaborated by going on Upwork, which is a freelance site, and I would describe the project, looking for a singer-songwriter for a suicide bereavement song or suicide prevention song. And then I would get people, from across the United States, and potentially, if you want to make it an international base, you could look for anyone across the world who's going to submit their ideas. And I've had really great success, right? And I also found I had a talent that I didn't know that I had. It's interesting because I may not be able to have the vocabulary to say, I'm looking for this, that, and the other in the song. But when I hear it, I know that's it, right? And also, I've also at times helped with a little bit of the shaping of the song. There's one song that's called Holding the Heart When It Breaks, which is singer-songwriter Annabelle Hodges. And I had written that after I had attended, it was July the 26th, I think it was 2023. It was the day that Sinead O'Connor died. And I had attended a suicide prevention conference that day. And when I got home, I read of her death. And then I read that her son had died by suicide. And initially, I wondered if she had died by suicide, which I think many people wondered. It ended up she had not died by suicide. But the very next morning, I wrote that poem, Holding the Heart When It Breaks, and Annabelle created it as the song. And I remember saying to Annabelle that, I want there to be a swell in the music, the way you're phrasing it. Let there be a swell in it.
You have a natural gift as a poet or songwriter as your second career.
Yeah.
So I was on your website and the Hold On campaign for suicide prevention, her organization. There's other stuff besides poetry and songwriting, if that's not your thing, like drawing. You have one on there called Draw Your Face Self-Portrait.
Oh, yes. Yeah. So I have a what I call Arts and Healing Resiliency Center workshops. And this had started before the Hold On campaign. So the Hold On campaign began with my display table at that Oregon Prevention Conference, July 26, 2023. And I think in August, I had the LLC papers. And I want to say that it is a fiscally sponsored nonprofit. and it's fiscally sponsored through an organization called From the Heart Productions.
This was going to be in the show notes also, because I did notice, just like the donate link, that you have, if you want to partner with Diane's organization, you can click a link, which I'd imagine it probably jumps through some hoops, but then you get to sponsor or do one of these events or something like that. You can help out.
So on the you're right, on the workshops. So
but how do you so real quick for listeners who hopefully they're not on the verge of needing 988, or just they want expressive communication. It's good for your mental health. Poetry is not my thing. Kudos to Diane and Daniel for trying to help me. It does draw on my face. How would that help me? This is my question to you, Dr. Kaufman. Tell me how you would do that if I was at your workshop.
Well, so I think that you're referring to a workshop that was done with Manzo Musa, who was an artist and a photographer and a dancer. So the Arts and Healing Resiliency Center offers monthly special events, which are free. In fact, there's going to be one happening this Sunday with a singer-songwriter. And if you go on the Arts and Healing, if you go on the Hold On campaign, I'm sure we're going to have a link to how to register for that. So the workshops are an opportunity for a person to draw or write, depending on the purpose of the workshop, and it forms a community, really a community of sharing.
Well, what if I'm at home in my bedroom? Would it help me there if I just try to draw a picture of my face? I'm thinking of the listener at home, and especially, not one in Portland.
Yeah.
Does this help is my question to you, or did I just find this on the website and it's kind of tangenting?
Well, I would say that if we're there, I think there's different ways to respond to what you just asked. One thing is that if let's say a person is in an acutely distressed state, if there's a way to help ourselves to get distracted into something positive that's not hurting ourselves, right?
Go get the crayons, the pencils, and the paper instead of the pills.
So if I can find some enjoyment in either drawing my face or being part of the group, maybe not participating, but watch other people share what they're doing. Or sometimes in the workshop, people in the chat are commenting on other people's creations, right? What they've done. Or sometimes a person, and these workshops are not at all specifically for you need to be suicidal to be in this workshop. These are workshops for anyone to participate in, right?
The point is to express yourself, how you're feeling creatively before you get in a mental state so bad you do want to end your life. Yes.
Yeah. And also I would say that, using myself as an example, that here I was writing poetry, in my 20s, but that was good that I was writing the poetry, but I also needed to reach out for help, right? So doing the art for me was not enough. I needed to, and I think we could all think of musicians and artists who ended their life by suicide, and they were amazingly creative people, right? So perhaps during the moment of creating the art, you're not actually killing yourself, you're creating. But in those off moments, you may need to reach out for help, whether that's calling 988, seeing a therapist, emergency room, medication, whatever you need to help yourself. Because you can feel better, and the pain can go away without your having to kill yourself.
Yeah, I like songwriting and poems, I think maybe because you can hide, like you were saying, behind the performance. You write the words and people don't really understand how serious you are about them. Like, that's me in that song. But nonetheless, I think it helps people, like take your father, for example. We just didn't have the skills to communicate at all how he felt.
And that's why he apologized, right? It was out of love that he apologized.
If he had, gone taken your poem class and, look, Diane, I wrote this here. I can't tell it to you in person. I'll mail it to you.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
in some effort, don't overthink it. It's my advice. Say what you mean and don't try to make it rhyme until you've written a few poems. Does your organization help people on the same? So I tried to do my research,
Yeah.
explore your site. Do you also help people write books? Because next I'm going to talk about your book, Bird That Wants to Fly. I also wanted to ask you,
Yeah.
do you help other people write books as part of your expressive communication stuff you do at the organization?
I not to write a book, right? However, in terms of um, I writing prompts, right? That potentially could lead. I'm going to give an example of this. So how did Bird That Wants to Fly happen? I was at a workshop,
Which
right?
is Diane's book. I'll introduce you
Yeah,
first.
yeah,
She won an award for this book. It says My Story, Bird That Wants to Fly, and then actually it was turned into an opera narrated by Danny Glover. It's a book.
yeah. So it's a illustrated, self-published book, and I went to a workshop. So when I say that, it's like I'm talking about the Arts and Healing Resiliency Center and Hold On campaign having workshops and people coming to the workshop. Well, I myself went to a workshop. I went to a workshop. I went to in New York City a while ago. Maybe it was like 15 years ago or something, and it was for my own healing.
Mm-hmm.
And it was sponsored through something called the Therapeutic Arts Alliance of Manhattan. And in the workshop, um, they gave us 3 pieces of paper. So here's the writing prompt. 3 pieces of paper. Imagine that 3 pieces of paper represented 3 parts of yourself, whatever that might be. With your non-dominant hand, which is my left hand, scribble on the paper. Don't intentionally draw something.
All 3 pages?
Yeah, scribble on each page.
Oh, okay. There's 3 pages.
Yeah, so it's 3 pages, and you're sort of imagining 3 parts of yourself, whatever that might.
Past, future, present, good, bad, neutral, bad boy, good boy.
Yeah, or it could be work, personal,
Oh, okay.
spiritual, or something divided in three,
Or who
whatever
I
that was.
am, who I want to be,
Yeah, yeah,
something like that.
you're on a roll. That's good, right?
I'm trying to paint a picture for myself.
Yeah.
I love this.
So three pieces of paper, scribble, look at your scribble and see if there is something there, some kind of image. You see something. And then, and it's like a double entendre, draw it out. Pull it out, draw it
So you're
out.
not really thinking about it really hard when you say scribble, and it's your non-dominant, so you don't think
Yeah.
too much. Who knows what will come out?
And just you're seeing something is going to emerge in that.
Oh, it's random. Just move the hand. Don't
Yeah,
think.
just
Just
move the
move the
hand.
hand.
Just go like this. So you're not
Cool.
in any way forcing that you're drawing something. You're just going
Okay.
like this. And then you're looking at it and,
She's scribbling.
and
For people who can't see the video, she's just waving her hand on the paper like random scribble.
just scribble on the page.
Literally scribble.
See if there's something there. And I thought, or I saw a bird in the first one. So I
Oh.
added color to it and more pencil, and I made it into a bird. And I called it, and then you had to title it, give it a name, a title.
So each
And I
page is going to
called it
have.
Bird That Wants to Fly, which signified me. I wanted to fly, right? And whatever metaphor that stood for.
Each page has one scribble and then one title on
Yeah.
each page.
Uh-huh. And then the next one, in the scribble, I thought I saw a horse. So I made it into a horse, and then I initially titled it beautiful animal that you are. And then I changed it to beautiful animal that I am. Then the third one was like a scribble, and I made it into like a loop-de-loop roller coaster with a please enter sign and arrows pointing in to go the carnival or where the roller coaster was. And the title for that one was Roller Coasting is Fun, True, False, or Both. So this was all, although they didn't tell us this directly, this is sort of like Carl Jung's active imagination
I
going
have no
on.
idea what that means. Carl Jung's a
Yeah.
psychiatrist, I think.
Yeah. So in a way, you're communing with archetypes, or they're communing with you. Then, so we started off with 3 blank pieces of paper, scribble, draw out the image, name, title the image, and then we were asked to stand in the center of a circle because this was a workshop with different people in the workshop. I'd never met any of these other people. And you stood in the center of a circle, and then you spoke for the image. You became the image.
You pretended you were a bird and then a
Yeah,
horse.
so I became the bird. And so I'm moving, I'm speaking, and I'm explaining maybe why I want to fly and why I can't fly. And then
Hold that thought. For people listening who want to try this at home, my suggestion would be to turn on your phone and record and pretend you are presenting to other people like she's doing. I'm the bird. You're pretending you're a bird. I would record that on my phone. Who knows what good stuff's going to come out on what you're thinking and feeling.
So then I became the bird. I became beautiful animal that I am, the horse.
Nice.
And then I became life in terms of, do I want to be in
Is this the
life?
third one? Third image?
Yeah.
What's the third image of again?
It was the roller coaster. And the title was Roller Coasting is Fun, True, False, or Both. So for me, the answer was both. It's fun, but it's scary. And maybe you don't want to be on the roller coaster, which also was related to not wanting to be alive. So, yeah. And then after doing all that, we were encouraged to write. And I have to say, that series of warm-ups and writing prompts and doing like almost like drama with embodying the image, the entire story flew out of me. First word.
Well, you got out of your head.
Word.
Yeah, it started with you completely getting out of your head with the non-dominant hand and the scribble. So you pulled it out of the subconscious or the ethos or God or from wherever you pull stuff out from. It gave you the starting point.
Yes. And so the story being called Bird That Wants to Fly, and it starts off that the bird is walking by the winter carnival, tail feathers neatly tucked between its legs. Oh my, she sighed. Life is so long and dreary. That's the first part of the story.
You're writing this down now. In the workshop, this is where they gave you pen and paper and they said, that's write the story now, write the story.
And there was not one edit in the story. The entire story came out whole. And the story is about the bird can't change direction because this is like the subtext. The bird is so depressed, it can't change direction. And its head is down and it's about to step into a puddle because it can't change direction. So it's going to step in the puddle. And it looks in the water, but instead of seeing its outer reflection, it sees its inner reflection. And in the water, it says, beautiful animal that I am. And the bird looks up and it sees this beautiful horse. And then it ends up that the horse is asking the bird, why are you walking, not flying? Doesn't it take longer that way? Okay. And then
this is why I would use the tape recorder when I'm doing because then I could listen to what I said on tape to the group or to myself.
Yeah.
And I could write down, just translate
Mhm.
It would help me out anyhow. Like, well, when I was pretending I was the bird, what was I telling people? I can't remember
Uh-huh.
now. I would just listen to myself back on what I was saying in the tape recorder, looking at my scribbles.
Yes. And then the story goes on that the horse is saying, that I want to hear your story, but if you're tired, you can rest on my back. And you see the bird, because it can't fly, it's like hopping up on the bird, on the horse to get,
Nice.
and it rests in the mane of the horse. And then the bird is not even aware of how tired it is because it's so disconnected because of how depressed it
Hmm.
is, right? So it's surprised with how many hours have passed when it wakes up. And then the horse is saying, I'm so eager to know you, like, tell me your story. And the bird says, like, lest I get confused, I'm going to tell it to you in one sentence. And the one sentence is explaining that the bird can fly, but it doesn't want to fly because it's afraid. And the
Mm.
reasons are, for the bird's trauma, it's I think it's like
Wow, really
rainstorms.
a lot, quite some deep stuff interconnected in a real
Yes.
way came out of this
Uh-huh.
scribble.
And there's rainstorms, blizzards, freezing rain, right?
Wow.
That's one of the reasons. And then there's children with rocks, meaning they're going to throw it at the bird. Men with shotguns, they're going to kill the bird, and birds crashing into each other.
Brainstorming.
Yeah. So those.
If I was stuck there and thinking, what can I do next? I would just brainstorm and the ideas you just mentioned might come out when I think of a bird that can't
Mhm.
fly. Like maybe someone run it over in a car because they don't see it. Or maybe there's bad people out there. Somebody might try to do something mean to it because it can't fly. And
Yeah. So it's that metaphor going on. So all those things are perhaps real for a real bird if it could talk to us and it wasn't flying, but it's also a metaphor for people, meaning being bullied, you know,
right.
violence, people just being chaotic with each other and not caring about each other.
Do you think
And
this
so
is a good exercise for children or people who, they can draw, they
I
get
think so.
crayons?
Yeah.
Because it was a child writing a poem might be a little, your vocabulary is limited to
Mhm.
start with.
With this story, which I'll just end the story, which is where the horse has listened to the bird tell the story. And it doesn't judge the bird, it doesn't challenge the bird. It just says, would you like to go on the roller coaster with me? That I know the owner, and it would be just us two. But first, and it's not so far away, it's a good way to begin. But first, I want to see your wings, right? Like I want you to fly to the roller coaster. And then you see the bird, like, quote, what is it? Chirps up its courage, right? And you see the bird spread its wings. And then you see the bird and the horse start to enter where the carnival would be. And then the last picture is the bird flying in the sky. Then you turn the page and it says, our story has ended, like the bird is in the sky, but it's also just the beginning. What do you think will happen next? Right? Write or draw, what you think. And then it also ends with now spread your beautiful wings and fly. Because the idea is that the birds are alone in the sky, but something is going to happen next. It's going to rain. There's going to be another bird. Something's going to happen.
Thought in my head, I might use the 3 pages for make the third page just the scribble, what you want to happen next in your life.
Yes. And I've used the story with young people when I was a psychiatrist back in Newark, New Jersey at the University of Medicine Dentistry of New Jersey in Newark, and then it became Rutgers Biomedical and Health Sciences. But I shared the story with some of my young patients, and we talk about have you ever felt like the bird? You know, um, Do you know anybody that's like the horse, right? What do you think happened? The bird was so sad, but now it's flying. And then what's so interesting, which I was not thinking of consciously and in a way, I feel like I didn't even write the story. I just feel the story came out of me, right? That the bird and the horse together make Pegasus, the flying horse. And Pegasus was born in terms of mythology. Pegasus was born from the severed head of Medusa. Medusa was the beautiful woman whose hair became snakes, and anybody that looked at her turned to stone. Athena did that to her. And Athena did that because Athena's consort, Poseidon, had raped Medusa. And they did it in Athena's temple. And Athena, instead of getting angry at Poseidon for what he did, she got angry at Medusa and cursed her. And so Medusa is a rape trauma survivor. And it's out of her severed head and blood that this miraculous flying horse appears. And actually, it was a twin birth. There was the twin was a person. I'm not sure if it was a person, but some figure uh, who was holding the sword of truth, right? But psychologists and people into mythology talk about Pegasus as being the symbol of poetry. So Pegasus is the symbol for poetry, and it's the symbol for transformation and transcendence. So for me, it's just sort of interesting that it was those images that I saw and those two things visually coming together.
So,
Yeah, and then let me just tell you how it became an opera. So I wrote the story, and it was just like a story that I wrote. And then I thought I really want to take it to the next level, not for the purpose of selling books, but I just almost like your baby and you want to dress it up and take it outside. So I wanted it to be illustrated. And I ended up finding an illustrator named Olya Kaletsai. And a young person, she had just graduated
how
college.
did you find her? Because it's hard to find illustrators. The publishers have them locked down. You got to pay them a lot. It's a lot of work.
Yeah. So I found Olya because I had taken a expressive artist facilitation certification program. It was one of those, I forget the word you use. It's like you're not, it's like you go there on the weekends. It was in Rhode Island, low residency, something like that. It was over a course of a number of months. There were some projects we needed to do, and then I would be driving with a friend of mine to Rhode Island for this class for maybe a weekend, right? Anyway, I had already received the certification, but I was still receiving their college catalog. And for whatever reason, I was reading their college catalog, and they had an article, oh yeah, or recent graduates, and it showed that she had illustrated a children's book on zoo animals, and I really liked her illustrations. So there I am in Newark, New Jersey, and I get on the phone and call up Salva Regina University in Newport, Rhode Island. And I told them, can you help me find Olya Kaletsai? Because I want her to illustrate the book. And Olya and I worked online for over a year.
So it's that simple. All you need to do is ask.
Yeah. And what's so amazing?
You get some thought pops in your head, like maybe that person
Follow that idea. And if
follow that
that
idea.
idea doesn't work out, then it's going to lead to something else. What was so interesting with Olya, and she did such a beautiful job, was initially her image of the bird was a very irritable, angry
You didn't
looking
like it.
bird. And that wasn't the bird in the story. So I said, oh yeah, we want the sad, dejected, forlorn bird. And so, and then with the horse, back then there was, and there still may be the toy My Little Pony. And I took a photograph of My Little Pony, and I said, it can't look like My Little Pony because that's copyrighted. But look at My Little Pony. I want the best of the masculine and the best of the feminine as archetypes within the horse, right? So, and she was able to create that and
So
did such a wonderful job. Yeah.
when you're working with somebody else on a project that's real close to you, you know, your baby,
Yeah.
did you do any negotiations like a one sheet up front, like we are co-partners in this, co-creators, co-copyright owners?
There was some, I know I still have it in my paperwork. There was a contract and agreement, right? In terms of sort of who owned what.
Like you own the story, you own the characters and
Hmm.
the text, and she owns technically her drawings.
Hmm. I'd have to look over whether it was a work for hire or not a work for hire, but there was an agreement, a mutually.
A work for hire, listeners, is say back to writing a song, you had this awesome poem, you don't need a word change, but you want to put it to music. You would go hire a musician, you pay them. So the
Yeah.
difference is you are paying them, but a work for hire is a copyright term, meaning when you go to copyright it, you're going to tell the copyright office that person's on it, but they work for hire. They don't own any copyright.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's good to have that agreement up front with whoever you're working with so it's understood, because if you don't,
Yeah.
later on they could go, hey, well, that's part of mine too. Like, no, it's not. I just wanted you to draw the pictures. I wasn't giving you copyright to my whole story and all my
Exactly.
characters. And
Yeah. So it just means communicating,
communicate. Yeah,
up
perfect.
front.
If you have a fear about, if you got a question pops into your mind, am I giving my rights away, or how's this going to work out? The downside of that is some people can't handle it. They get turned off by it.
Yeah. Hmm.
But it's something to be aware of if you're going to do your work with somebody else and you want it to be turned into an opera.
Yeah. 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 So let me tell you now how that happens. So first I go to a workshop, then I write a story again for my own healing. Then then it becomes an illustrated children's book, right? Then what happened was I had started in collaboration with the nursing department at University of Medicine and Dentistry of New Jersey, which later became Rutgers Biomedical and Health Sciences. But when I was there, it was UMDNJ, and University Hospital was part of the medical complex. I started something in collaboration with them called Creative Arts Healthcare. So, Creative Arts Healthcare, we were inviting artists, it could be poet, musician, photographer, to give grand rounds presentations on art in healing, as well as various other things that we were doing within the hospital. We ended up collaborating with an arts organization who were providing arts activities for pediatric patients. But I was asked by the nursing department if I would go to downtown Essex because there was a meeting that was being held. The nursing department, nothing that I myself had done, but it was now sort of under the umbrella of Creative Arts Healthcare. They had received a grant, and the grant was for a computer animation artist to work with patients in the hospital who had sickle cell disease. So I was representing the hospital or the nursing department. So I went to the meeting. So I'm at the meeting, and there is a gentleman and lots of other people, but there was a very tall gentleman there who was busy looking at his computer. And I walked over to him and I introduced myself. And his name was Kevin Maynor, and he was there because his organization, Trilogy and Opera Company, had received a grant. And I was there because UMDNJ, University Hospital, received a grant. So when I heard that Kevin himself was the director, and he was an opera singer, and it was in Newark, which is the same city where UMDNJ is. I thought, oh, let me talk to Kevin. Maybe there could be opera arias or performances that would be
Dream
given
big,
at.
people. That's what I'm getting out of this. Dream big. Why not my book made into an opera?
Yeah, so maybe there could be some operatic work that could be done for patients or for staff as part of Creative Arts Healthcare would invite him to do that, his organization. So I spoke to Kevin and I said, I'd like to meet with you again. And we scheduled a meeting. So this time, Kevin came to my office at UMDNJ. And I was in the building that I worked in, which was right in front of the very, very large medical sciences building that was connected to everything else, right? So I was in a standalone building. And it just so happened, so this shows like collision of events, like serendipity and synchronicity, that it just so happened that there was an art exhibit going on in the medical sciences building. And the art exhibit was open to anyone who not a it was open to anyone but patients. So you could be a volunteer in the hospital, you could work in the cafeteria, you could be a professor, you could be a doctor. And if you were a quilter, a painter, a photographer, you could have your work put up as part of the art exhibit, right? Well, I had my story, Bird That Wants to Fly, 3 pages typed, framed. Olya's storyboard of all the illustrations was framed. The first illustration that was done was framed, and there was one that she was working on, a work in progress, that was framed. All of that was in the medical sciences building. So I'm meeting with Kevin, and I wanted Kevin to understand that I was not only like the psychiatrist and the developer of Creative Arts Healthcare. It was really important for me for Kevin to understand that I was an artist, right? And so I said, Kevin, let's go to the medical sciences building because I want to show you
So
the
you're
story that I wrote.
extracting him. You're extracting him from your environment, from the
Mhm.
academia environment,
Yes.
before you you poach on him that you're also an artist.
Yeah, because when I invited him, it had nothing to do about Bird That Wants to Fly. It was about him as an opera singer and his opera
Hmm.
company, right? But in
Right.
meeting him, I just wanted him to connect with me as artist to artist. And so we went across the little roadway and went to the medical sciences building. And Kevin, and you have to imagine, like 6'2" man, right? And he's looking at my story and he's tapping on the glass covering the frame story. He's tapping on every word of my story.
Hmm.
And he's looking at the artwork. And then he turns to me, Daniel, in the medical sciences building. He goes, that would make a beautiful opera.
Mm. So you didn't even have to ask him. Did you know he was an opera in the opera?
No, so I knew that it was opera company and he was an opera singer.
So you knew that.
I knew that. But when I showed him the story, I wasn't thinking like, oh, he can make it into an opera. I just wanted to show him the story. I wanted him to know I was an artist.
That's why I asked, because what I've taken away from this is what I've noticed with a lot of people. They think they need to do everything. Like, you ask people, you asked them to go across the street, but you just didn't go, I'm going to make this happen and it's going to be this way or the highway and nothing else short of I'm going to make this guy want to make it into an opera. You had to put yourself out there, and your work is good. You want to show them, but then it just happened on its
It just
own.
happened. Yeah. So again, yeah. And there wasn't even the thought in my head about it being an opera. Like no thought at all. I just wanted him to go, well, I'm sure I wanted him to say, wow, that's a wonderful story. Thank you for sharing. I mean, that was my
Yeah.
expectation or why I wanted him to see it or for him to say, yes, yeah, you're an artist too. right? I can feel your
So then you
hearts.
made it into an opera, and how did Danny Glover get to
Yeah.
narrate? You must have gotten a real publisher then. Is it self-published?
Yeah. So what happened was in the foyer, he said, Kevin says to me, do you want it to be an opera? I said, well, that would be amazing, right? I want to say that fortunately I had my own money and was able to put up the money for this to become an opera. He got on the phone with Michael Raphael, who is a composer that he had worked with before. Uh, and then and then Michael created, the score for it to become the opera. And Danny Glover is a friend of the opera company.
There's
So
another
Kev,
synchronicity that you
yeah,
couldn't have
they
foreseen.
already knew each other, and Danny Glover was supporting the opera company. And then um, Danny, when there was an audible download of the opera, it starts with the story being read, and it's Danny Glover who's reading the story.
Nice.
So it was all those.
So the whole thing is in your name. You own 100% of it.
Well, I know. Well, I don't think so. I mean, I don't own the opera. I mean, the opera belongs to the composer who's sick.
You own or your book anyhow. You're still
Yes, yeah.
technically
Mhm.
self-published.
And the story has been translated into Spanish and also into German.
Is that through Amazon automatically? You didn't have to, or did you
Oh no, I,
translate
I
it?
hired somebody to do the translation. But this just shows, I mean, I love this story
It's
because
great. I loved when you told me how you made it.
yeah, like because all of this came out of going to an arts and
It came
healing
out of
workshop.
scribble, people.
It
Scribble.
came out of
Right
scribble.
hand or left hand scribble. The non-dominant hand scribble.
Yeah.
This was actually make me, if I was listening right now, to try this exercise first before I tried the tips we're giving people on how to write a poem.
Yes.
And then the
Mm-hmm.
last thing I was going to ask you today, maybe it's a mute point now because this exercise sounded so great. I'm going to make an opera. Um, would be, is there a third thing you can give people through all your expressive communication skills? A third exercise tool you can give people to, it's for the mental health, express how you're feeling, songwriting.
Mm-hmm.
This scribble exercise turns into a miracle,
Yeah.
wonderful things. Is there a third one?
Oh, this is another example, and I have personal experience with it. That I was co-facilitating with an art therapist. Her name is Margaret Hartsook, and I live within short walking distance, like 2 blocks away from Good Samaritan. It's called Legacy Good Samaritan Hospital, and there is there's a cancer program here with the hospital, and they have an arts and healing program associated with the hospital. So I had found out about that, and for a while I was a volunteer at the hospital with that program, and I was volunteering with Margaret with patients who had cancer, and we had a Words for Healing group, uh, poetry writing, and it could also be drawing as well. But in one of those workshops, that we were doing together, Margaret had baskets, and in the baskets she had all sorts of objects. So the objects could be anything. It could be a postcard, an acorn, a coin, a feather. I mean, just like random things.
Mm-hmm.
And so there could be random things that you have in your own home, right? And at the workshop, the writing prompt was choose a couple of items, objects, and just the same way as with Bird That Wants to Fly, like look at those objects, right? Look at the drawing, look at the object, and see what comes of that creatively, right? So in that workshop that I was participating in as well as being a co-facilitator, I chose 3 objects. One object was a cloth flower. So it was a bloom, a blossom, and it was um, a kind of pinkish red flower, about that big. I chose a coin shape. It was a coin.
How many you get to, how many are allowed to choose?
There wasn't a limit.
So, I mean, I'm like thinking if I do this exercise myself again at home, I get a basket or a bag, a shopping
Yeah.
bag. I go around the house. Would I collect 10 things, light
Uh-huh.
things that'll fit in the bag, and then I
Then
can
see what
pull out as many?
happens.
Okay.
It's interesting that I chose three things, right? I happened to choose three. The second was coin shape. On the front of it or the back of it, it had a bird, and the back of it, it had the word silence. And the third object I chose was a pin that was an angel pin. And across the sash of the dress that the angel had wings, it was kind of gold looking. Her sash had a heart, a crescent moon, and a star. So those were my three objects. So the writing prompt to anybody listening could be the idea of choose objects, right? And then just kind of be with them and see what happens. And I wrote a story, again, first word to last word, not one edit. It was very perfunctorily called Three Objects Spoke to Me, which are these three objects. And the story, which not only it was a story that I wrote, then I had it illustrated by Lucia Martinez Rojas, a creative collaborator and animator whom I'd worked with before. Lucia, and I'm still
It's
working with
amazing
her.
to me that a moment ago I was like, this is just some silly exercise doing in my bedroom or at home, kill time or to help myself because I'm not feeling well mentally, or I'd like to take my attention and put it somewhere else for a moment because the day has been a rough day. And you're already talking about another opera or something huge.
Yeah, yeah. So
And you didn't try, you didn't force it. You didn't go,
yeah,
it's got to be this object if it's going to be a good
uh-huh.
ending or good story, right? You pick three random objects.
So it became a story. It became a beautifully illustrated story, and it also became an animation. And it became a coloring book, which I'll explain. So this story that in a sense wrote itself, because you could think in a way like I chose the objects, but you could also look at it, if you want to look at it in a cosmic way, that they chose me, those objects. So the story it starts off like that the bird is alone in the sky and all around is silence, which is the coin, right? And then the next page, it says the girl who did not know she was an angel, right, is walking like in the dark, and she does not know her destination. So the story is about being lost on your life journey, right? And the girl who's maybe an angel, right? She looks up in the sky to look at the moon, but instead of seeing the moon, she sees a flower blooming in the sky. So there's
Let me break into your process for a moment. You're really good. Help me a little if you can. When you look at the quarter's got, how are you getting this into that story? You're looking at an object. Like break it down. Give me,
I
no, you
don't,
can't.
because I feel it's almost like an unconscious
Well, that's okay too.
process
That's perfect.
because
That's what I'm looking
yeah,
to do.
because I don't know consciously how I did that. It's like it just popped in my head.
So what was the first object?
So there's three objects, and I don't remember which I chose first, but the three objects were a rose bloom.
A rose bloom, like a fake flower?
Yeah, so it's just the blossom of a flower. So it's red, and it's a blossom out of cloth.
So you pick it up and then it's the first thought that comes in your head.
And it became, or maybe everything came together because in this, so there's the three objects, which are the cloth bloom, the coin that has a bird and the word silence on it, and then the angel pin with the heart, crescent moon, and star. Those are the three objects.
You were looking all them at once and it just came to you.
Yeah, so there's all three objects, and all of a sudden there was a connection between these three objects.
But you didn't question the connection. You didn't challenge or question, could that be better? Is that maybe weird or different, or that's not what I'm looking for? You didn't, right?
Yeah, you're right. Like I wrote what I heard in my head. Right.
Don't question it. Yeah.
So the first object became that I wrote about was the bird and the word silence. Then it becomes the angel pin becomes the girl who's lost on her life journey.
Going with the flow. We're just going with whatever flows into our head. We're writing it down or just going with the picture. We're not.
And it's interesting, like she didn't know she was an angel. There was the angel pin. Now it becomes the girl who didn't know she was an angel. And then the third object becomes, in place of the moon, there's a flower bloom that's not only a flower in the sky, but petals are falling from the moon and reaching the earth. So there you have the girl who's lost and it's dark and she's looking up at this beautiful real flower in the sky, and she's totally transfixed and there's petals, and she does not want it to change. She wants that to be her only experience because it's so beautiful. And then she starts questioning herself, like, if I breathe, is it going to go away? If I move, is it going to go away? Does it?
Now you're writing this down at this point?
Yeah, I'm writing. So the whole story is just coming out. You got
as pen and paper as you're looking at these objects on the table. Yeah. You're writing the story, pen and paper.
So the story is writing. The story is almost writing itself, right? And so then the girl is thinking, like, what does it mean? Like what does it mean that there's no moon? And
we'll break into your process again, Diane.
Yeah.
I'm picturing you. I get this thought in my head. What does it mean? You're not actually thinking, what does it mean? You write down, what does it mean? Because you're writing a story.
And it's the girl in the story who's asking, what does it mean?
And you're waiting for the next thought to pop into your head, not stop and analyze it.
Yeah.
No, you're just writing what comes into your head, right?
Mm-hmm. And yes. And then the girl is saying, and do I deserve it? Like, if it means something, do I deserve what's happening to me? And then the next thought was like, and what if it means nothing? Like that there's no longer a moon, there's a flower. And then it becomes, if I tell somebody what I'm seeing, because the girl is aware that it's some kind of a vision, right? That there's supposed to be a moon, not a flower. Will somebody steal the vision? Will they think she's crazy?
And at no point in this have you stopped and read your story from the start and gone, is it good or bad? Should I change this or that? This is not the point. I'm trying to break your process down for people.
Yes, you're right. So you're right. It's not becoming, let me read it from the beginning. It's flowing.
This is not the time to edit. This is time to brainstorm and free flow, or whatever the word is.
And so then it becomes, she checks her reality. She looks up again, right? And it's like the idea that it's confirmed that that's what she's seeing. She sees the bird, she sees the flower in the sky, right? Then what happens is she has a magic dream. It goes like not knowing what to do next, right? That she has a dream, right? And in the dream, she gets the answer to her question about what it all means, right? And then it ends with a kind of a description about the bird is her spirit's call, right? And maybe I'd have to get the storybook to remember what it all means, but it's one of it is the love she shares, right? And the spirit's call and the silence in her heart, right? And then you see in the story, remember I mentioned the sash around the girl? With the heart, the crescent moon, and the star. In the story and in the illustration, that becomes a necklace that she's wearing. The necklace is green, and it has small rosebuds along the necklace. There's little tiny rosebuds, and then there's a pendant, and the pendant is in gold, and there's a heart shape, and on the outside is like gold spokes, and then underneath is like a dangling crescent moon. So the what I'm calling the garland is her necklace, and the necklace has a heart, a crescent moon, and a star in it.
And then how did the story end?
Yeah, so the end of, she has a magic dream, and in the dream, the meaning of what this all is explained to her. And the last line of the meaning is that the garland, the necklace that she's wearing, which creatively came from the angel pin and the sash, right? Spiritual, is her, quote, protection from not knowing. So the garland is helping her to remember her spiritual self, right? And then the end of the story says that was so long ago, right? And this is the first time I am telling her story. And then you
All
see
that
it,
out of three objects, random three objects.
all that out of three objects. And it's really a beautiful story. And then there was the animation. And then I asked Lucia if she could make a coloring book. So what she did was that if you open the book, the page is blank, and then on the bottom of the page is a few lines from the text. So you could start reading the story.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the opposite page, there's either an illustration from the book or a new coloring.
And how do you make the coloring book? It's black and white, so you can self-publish that.
Yeah.
It's just a black and white novel,
exactly.
basically.
Uh-huh. So what's amazing, I feel, about the coloring book is a person can read the story, right? They can color they're quite beautiful. The coloring pages,
the colors will come to them.
Mm-hmm.
They will put down their own colors.
Mm-hmm. And then on the blank page, which is above the text, right? So I described it. You open the page, there's a blank page, but on the page is the beginning of the story. You can draw your own picture or write your own poem or do something in that blank space. So it really becomes an expressive arts experience for yourself.
This is not just for children. This is for adults too.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm saying, I'm stating as a fact. The local gas station near me, whenever I go in, it's slow. The gas station attendant is got a coloring book.
So it's pretty amazing what creativity can do, and how, what's the word, generative it is, that one idea potentially can lead to another idea, which it's almost like like nesting.
Just got to stay out of your head, and back to, if it's a song or poem, something personal or more serious, that you're trying to say how you feel, just say it. Stay out of your head. Just say it. Like when I was trying to break down her process just now.
Yeah.
Like, what's going on in your head? She's not thinking. She's just.
That's true. Not thinking.
Scribbles. Yeah, that's good. Doing a great show. It'll all be in the show notes. Your organization's website, Hold On Campaign for Suicide Prevention. Actually, the website, I think, is holdoncampaign.org. It's that simple. As well as a link to your Bird Wants to Fly book.
Thank you.
Anything you want to add?
I guess I want to go back to the name Hold On Campaign for Suicide Prevention. That the idea that a reason for that name, in addition to, that there was the poem and then the song, is just the very idea that if we can hold on, right? If we don't act on that suicidal thought, right? Just don't act on it. Right? We can have a thought, but that doesn't mean.
This reminds me of going to the refrigerator, or like I'm just to get something to eat. Just hold on. Don't go to the refrigerator. It's kind of tough sometimes.
I know it's hard. And that's where friends come in. That's where 988 comes in. That's where prayer comes in.
Yeah.
Taking a nap, drinking tea, watching
If you
TV.
call your friend, even if you don't call 988, if you go, you know what? I'm going to text, just go through my phone, text, call
Yeah.
anybody.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to tell them, that
Mm-hmm.
what I'm was thinking about doing, but you break the moment.
Yeah, that's very true. You can break the spell of the moment because, when you think about people whose lives ended in suicide, they wanted to get out of that pain, right? They didn't see any other option,
Yeah.
but there are other options. And if it's sad, if they could have held on just a little longer, they'd still be alive. Yeah. So I think that idea.
Maybe. One thought that comes to mind though is a lot of people probably did hold on and the
Well,
next day
sure.
they
Yeah, I'm not
held
saying
on.
that. I agree with you. Not everybody is going to be able to. People do die by suicide. It's the in my state in Oregon, it's the second no, it is the second leading cause of death for ages 10, I think, to 34. In the state, it's the 10th leading cause of death. In the United States, suicide is the 11th leading cause of death, and I think that translates into one person dead. If I'm getting my stats right, like
Here's what I would hope. I'm holding on. Tomorrow comes, I hold on. You know what? I'm going to give it a third day. I need somebody to
yeah,
recognize you're not okay.
yes,
Are you okay? To which there is actually a way that, like CPR, there's CPR for heart attacks. What's the acronym for the organization that teaches people to recognize symptoms of suicide and step in, whether it's a stranger or
Um, well, there are organizations. There's AFSP, American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. There's NAMI, National Alliance for Mental Illness. I have a song on the website. It's called "Don't Give Up." It's an animated song video, and it talks about don't give up even though you want to. And it talks about you're not a burden. Sometimes people feel that they're a burden to other people and they're doing other people a favor by killing themselves. Um, so, in terms of things that we might recognize in other people, they're becoming quieter, their mood seems off, they're talking about being unhappy. They may even talk about that they don't want to be alive. Some people are afraid to bring up to other people, are you feeling depressed? Do you want to hurt yourself? Are you thinking of suicide? We
yeah.
need to feel open and okay about talking about it directly, right? Also, people start, they might be giving things away, right? That they don't.
Was this the one you mentioned? Yeah, giving stuff away is a big one. It's
Mhm.
QPR dot or QPRinstitute.com. Like
Yes.
there's CPR, there's QPR, which is how do you question, persuade, and refer
Yes.
people. It's 3 simple steps anyone can learn to save a life from suicide. It's how you recognize suicide, and more importantly, how you talk to someone.
Yes.
Because that's the difficult part. You recognize it, and well, what would I say? Oh, you're acting real manic today. What's next? So the QPR, CPR, this QPR, you can learn how to actually recognize. So
Mhm.
you give me 3 days again. I hold on a day. Second day, I'm holding on. By the second night, people, go to the QPR or Diane's website or someplace.
Yeah.
And if I see that guy again tomorrow, hopefully I will. Hopefully
Yes.
he held
Yeah.
on. I know how to question him now.
And there, within different states, there are um, mental health organizations like mental health first aid, um,
That people can
coursework
go to on their
that
own.
people can go to on their own.
Forgot about that part. Yeah, I can help myself too, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So not to help myself, but also to help other people, right? What are skills that I can learn, not only that could help myself, that could help other people. And some of those programs are free, or they have scholarships, or a minimal amount of money.
Great show, Dr. Kaufman. Thank you for being my guest, and wish you well. It's good work you're doing, and you're talented.
Oh, thank you. I very much enjoyed talking with you.
That's good. Have a good evening.
Okay, you too. Bye.